So, you have this old vintage TV monitor system thing sitting right here that you want to add text to or some kind of screen to, but you're unable to because it's old, decrepit, and broken, and dead. Well, that's a great thing that you hit this video, because today we're looking at how to apply any type of 90s vintage text look to any screen or monitor or anything of that nature. Starting right now. So for this tutorial, we will be looking at this wedding video that I recently did for my sister. Link is in the description below, so if you want to check that out. But in the beginning of that wedding video, we had this old TV monitor system that we had to apply text to and a bunch of other fun little things. Pretty cool video. Quite enjoyed editing it, even though it was a headache. But if you're watching this, sister, I love you and it was all good. See, we never say we love each other, but I know she'll never watch this, so I can tell her I love you from right here. And she'll never know. Anyway, so the first thing we want to do is get the text of the word memory log. So we can select our text tool and just type in memory log. I'm going to have cap locks on. This font, if you're wondering, is Almaq. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's A-L-M-A-Q. And all these fonts will be available in, the Creative Cloud, the little font packs that you can go search for. Anyway, so there's our memory log right there. Remember to Control-Alt-Home to get the anchor point center of our text. And then what we want to do is we want to go right mouse click, go to Effect, and then we're going to go to Stylize and then Color Impose. And then we want to set the relief to something like 10 will be fine. And the angle at 45 can remain, and then we want to right mouse click on our text again, go to Effect, Color Correction, and then go down to Tint, and then in the black square for the tint, we can change that to whatever color we want. For this particular video, I chose green and purple, which I'm just realizing I should have lit myself green and purple since that's the colors we're using for this. Whatever, that's a failed opportunity, that's okay. So let's do a light green for this one. And from that, you can see we're having this VHS vintage MTV style fringing situation going on here. Okay, so next we want to add a wiggle expression to our relief tab in the color impose. So if we alt mouse click, I can't talk. If we alt mouse click, right mouse, I'm resetting. We want to right mouse click while holding down Alt on the keyframe little stopwatch clicker, and you can see our expressions little tab comes down here. We want to type in wiggle, and then we're going to put parentheses 100, comma 5. And what that does is it makes what we just made green in that fringing type look, it makes it wiggle like crazy, okay? So that's what we want. Next thing we want to do is we want to duplicate this layer, so Control D on the layer, and then the one on the bottom, we can come up here to the color impose and we can change the angle exactly opposite of what we have. So if we just take this little spinny thing right here and go all the way around, you see I don't like specific terminology. When I say spinny thing, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And then we can change the color to something opposite. So opposite of green on the spectrum is purple. So it doesn't have to be opposite, it's just what is up with this mouse? So after you do that, you want to take your top layer and set the blending mode to darken so we can see the color that we created on the bottom. And that by itself honestly could be an effect that you want already. Who knows? Anyway, next thing we want to do is we want to right mouse click on our timeline, go to New, and then click Adjustment Layer. And now we're going to create an adjustment layer to add effects to it to apply to the 2 layers of text that we just added. The first effect we want to add to our adjustment layer, if we right mouse click, go to Effect, we go to Distort, and we can go down to Offset. And basically this little tool right here just allows us to move our text around without changing. If we were to add keyframes to our position of our text, then we can then adjust the position of our text later on if we wanted to without affecting the keyframes. That's irrelevant right now though. Anyway, what we want to do now is we want to add a wiggle expression to the shift center to area. So if we right mouse click again, holding down Alt in this stopwatch right there, and then our expressions area pops up down in the timeline, we want to type in wiggle, and then we're going to put 100, comma 2. And that will cause the entire text to just slightly wiggle. And I just realized something when I did this effect for my actual sister's wedding video. The composition was 6K, but I'm doing this in 2K, so it doesn't like slow up during this tutorial, which is why I was looking at it, I feel like my colors of purple and green looked like they were showing and wiggling a little bit too much than what I remember. So let us go back And you're probably wondering, Austin, why didn't you just cut this out of the tutorial? Why are you showing this mistake? Well, I want you to learn. I want you to learn from my mistake, and just remember that if you are doing an effect on a 6K composition, and let's say you apply the wiggle of a position to be something like 25% of like space of motion, it's not going to be the same as if you were on a composition of 1080p. It's going to move a lot more on 1080p because 25 pixels is a lot more on 1080p than 6K because a lot more pixels work with it. Anyway, so back to the adjustment layer, we want to add a displacement map now. So we right mouse click, go to Effect, Distort, and click Displacement Map. And then we want to change the U's for horizontal displacement. We can keep it at red, and the other one we can keep it green actually. We can keep those exactly the same. What we want to do though is we do want to add again a wiggle expression to the horizontal displacement. And I don't do it for the vertical displacement because when I think of a vintage TV screen, I'm thinking of horizontal lines and horizontal static. So let's right mouse click on that stopwatch, holding down Alt, and let's create a wiggle expression of 100. Well, my notes say 100,5. However, like I said before, all my notes are relevant now because we're in a 2K composition. So we're going to do 100,2. That should look great. Reduce the amount of movement, and if we look at it, yes, that looks great. It actually might be a little too shaky. Let's go 100,1. Just a reminder, this is in 2K composition, so if you're in 2K, I just realized I need to tell y'all what my composition parameters are. It's a great idea for future tutorials. All right, next thing on this adjustment layer is we're gonna add the turbulent displacement effect. So we go to Distort, go to Turbulent Displacement. We can adjust the size to whatever you see fit. As we bring it down, you can see it starts to become a little bit more like static instead of this like wonky wave look. So I'm gonna go to something like 3. Let's go 3, looks good. And then we want to add a wiggle expression to the amount of turbulent displacement. So right mouse click, holding down Alt. We're going to go 50,60 for our wiggle expression. And as you can see, this is just again making our text more and more jittery. Now a turbulent displacement effect added on there, that's where things can get really fun. We left the displacement option to turbulent, but if you want, we could change it to horizontal, which I think is a really good idea too, because in horizontal you can see instead of this waviness, we get these horizontal lines, and we take the size and we bring it down low enough, and you can see if I change the amount, you're starting to get like almost the static look going on. And honestly, I'm gonna stick with that. I didn't do that for the actual video, but whatever. And the last effect that we're gonna add to our adjustment layer is we're going to go to Effect, Blur, and then go to Vector Blur. And we are going to change the amount of the vector blur to 7. And what that does is it kind of softens out. Let me turn this to full quality. What that does is it softens out the edges here. If I turn it off, you can see the edges are quite harsh. But if we turn it on, it softens it out and almost gives it a little bubbly effect. But I like that. That seems cool. And that's all we have to do for our text right there. So we want to select all 3 layers, right mouse click, pre-compose. Let's call it memory log text. And then move all attributes, yes, 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 yada, yada, hit OK. And then we want to take this pre-composed layer and we want to Control D to duplicate. And then on the bottom layer, we want to right mouse click, hit Effect, go to Blur, and then go to Gaussian Blur. And we want to blur it up to something like, what do I have in my notes? I have 120. Let's blur it to 120. Okay, but then let's change the horizontal and vertical to just vertical. And then we want to duplicate this blur right here. So select the blur, Control D to duplicate, and then change the second one just to horizontal and vertical and change it to something like 25. Actually, let's go a little bit higher. Let's see, right there is good. And we can select the bottom layer. We can select T to bring up our opacity option. Right mouse click while holding down Alt to create a wiggle expression. We're going to make it, let's make it 100 by 35. And there we go. We have this nice type of more fringing of light on our text to create that pixelated old monitor look when we apply it to the monitor. Next thing we're gonna do is we're going to create that text bar from when their names are being typed into it. Real simple there. If we come up to this square icon right here, the rectangle tool, click and hold down so we can see the rounded rectangle tool. Select that one, and then let's just draw out this nice little bar right here. Then we can go, well, first we can go up to the stroke right here, and we can bring it down a little bit, probably something around 11 looks good. And then if we go to this drop down menu down here where it says rectangle, and we go to fill, and then you can see in the fill we have the opacity option right here. Let's bring that down to 0 to bring the middle to be transparent of our little text bar. And I want to Control-Alt-Home to bring the anchor point in the middle of it, and then I'm going to scale it down just a little bit. I'm actually going to bring the stroke up to 13 instead. So for this shape and other shapes that we're creating in this tutorial, we're going to be adding the same exact effects that we did to the memory log text, so I'm not going to go through that again, but that's what I'm about to do. And after I applied all these effects, how did that die? How did that light die? Now, after I applied those effects to our little text bar there, it did shrink down the actual thinness of our line. So I changed the stroke thickness to 27, and that seemed to do the trick. I also took our two memory texts right here and put them on top, so then we could add the adjustment layer to what we're about to add without adding it to the memory text again. I mean the memory log text again. All right, next we're gonna create the little cursor thing that goes across computers when you type. I guess it's called a cursor. Leave it in the comments what it's actually called. We can go back to the rounded rectangle tool, select that, and then if we just zoom in here, we can do a very small little rectangle, and literally it'll just be the stroke type area that we'll use for this type of object. So now let's give our little cursor guy the pulsating effect, as if it's just the opacity is going in and out, in and out. So what we want to do there is select T to bring up our opacity option, click the stopwatch to create a keyframe, and then let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, short 10. Sounds good. Frames ahead, and then change the opacity to 0. So we have this nice little fade out right there. And now we want to right mouse click on our stopwatch again while holding Alt, and we want to type in loop out, and you'll see the option right there. And then we can click that, hit enter, and then in the parentheses we want to put quotation marks, and then go down to cycle, hit enter. And now you can see we have this nice little loop there. Now it's a little too fast, so what we can do is we can take this last keyframe and stretch it out a little bit. If you wanted it to appear more than it actually disappears, you could also take the first keyframe, copy and paste, and then it'll hold on to that first one a little bit longer. And I actually like the look of that a little better. So we can actually turn off that layer for now. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna type out Sam and Noel in the actual text box right here. I'm gonna change the font to a more pixelated font for us, something that starts with an F. Where is it at? Fixed SYS. I don't know how to pronounce it per se. And let's Control-Alt-Home to bring the anchor point to the center, and let's scale it down to fit into our bar. All right, right there looks great. I like that. So now we want to have it appear as if it's being typed, and that is also very, very simple. And if we select the text, we hit the drop down arrow right here, and if we go up to animate, we can go to, what's it called? We can do opacity, and then we can go down to the range selector, and you can see if we have the range selector, we can go from start on, that's on 0, and if we go to 100, it does nothing. So why does it do nothing? Well, we need to change the opacity to 0. So let's change that to 0, and then if we do the range, you can see they start to appear letter by letter. So what we could do is we could just keyframe this start percentage right here, but the only issue is it's going to be fading in, and when you type, it doesn't fade in like that. So what we want to do is we can, for right now, we can make the keyframes for this. So we can select the stopwatch and create a keyframe to make it 0 will be fine, and we can move ahead and then go up to 100. And yeah, it seems all right. But to stop this fade, what we can do is we can go down into the advanced options and just change the smoothness to 0. And now you can see they just appear one by one. That looks great. The last little detail I want to do though is I don't want them to just appear bop, 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 but I want them to have a little bit of life to them, as if a human is actually typing them, and it's not going to be perfectly paced every time. So what we can do is we can select this little start percentage that we added keyframes to for the range selector, and go up to our graph editor right here, and with our graph editor we can just adjust the speed in which someone will be typing. So it really can be random, but we'll have it kind of slow, speed up, and then slow back down at the end. And right there, it's very subtle, but it adds just a little bit of life when you would be adding the sound design. Okay, now we can turn our cursor layer back on. Let's make sure we put it above the Sam and Noel text. And with this layer, we're literally just going to keyframe. So we hit P, we're gonna keyframe the position, hit the stopwatch, and we're just going to move it every time a new letter appears. So we can keep it where it is right here. I'm gonna use the page down button to go ahead in our video easily. Let me just zoom in here. So if we keep going, okay, so the S just appeared. So the frame right before that, you wanna add a keyframe, go the frame there, and then we can just move right on over. You can use the mouse or you can use the little arrows on your keyboard. And we wanna do that for every single letter. You wanna make a keyframe right before it appears, and then right when it appears, move it to the right of the letter. So let's do that real fast. When you're done with that, you'll be left with this right here, and that looks fabulous. Now, one thing I did do is where there's spaces, so where there was the Sam and then space and, I did apply keyframe 2 for that cursor to move with the space as well. You can see right there, it moves. I just picked a random little spot that was in between when the A was going to appear for the and. So just remember to do that too, because if someone's typing, they'd be hitting space as well to get that cursor to move over. Sweet. So what we can do now is we can pre-compose our adjustment layer down to the actual shape layer. Right mouse click, pre-compose, and then you want to copy, duplicate that layer, and then underneath we can copy and paste the same little blur effects that we did for the memory log, and then we can also copy the same wiggle expression that we had for the memory log blur as well. So all that leaves us with this right here, which looks pretty good. The last little detail before we render out I want to add is I want to right mouse click on our timeline, go to new, go to adjustment layer, and then on everything I want to right mouse click, go to effect, distort, and go to, I thought it was in distort, where is it at? It's called lens. Where is it at? That's why we can always go over to our search bar. Let's type in lens. I thought it was in distort. It is actually, it is in distort. It's CC lens. I was looking at the wrong thing. Haha, there it is, CC lens. And that looks awful. So let's bring the size up actually. And then the convergence, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, we can bring down, and you can see it's bending back our image a little bit. And that's gonna be nice for when we apply it to an old TV monitor that has this like bubbled type of glass on the front. So I just honestly brought it down all the way to 1 or -16. That looks great. Yeah, so we can go ahead and render that out. The way we'll render it out is we can, first of all, save, make sure that our timeline is selected, go to File, Export, and then we're going to add to render queue. And then in our render queue, which automatically pops up, we can select lossless and change the format to QuickTime. Make sure our format options is on animation, and then change our channels to RGB plus alpha. Hit OK, if my mouse would work with me. And then when you export it, it'll export without its black background. Ain't no love in my man, shoo up, shoo up. Okay, so here's the shot right here that we're going to be adding our effect to. And if we turn on our effect, you can see we got this right here. So the first thing I want to do is we want to apply the perspective correctly, which that is actually really easy. If we right mouse click, go to effect, we can go to distort, and we can go to corner pin. And with corner pin, we can take, if you see in the corner of our little, you can barely see it, it's under the squares, we have these little pin markers, and each pin marker can distort and warp the image. That right there actually looks kind of cool, looks like it's floating around. Anyway, so we can take these corner pins and move them just right to each corner of our screen, right there, right there. And when you do that, it automatically gets our perspective perfectly. And then the nice thing is we can hit S and adjust the scale from there. If we want to scale it up a little bit and position it a little differently, but our perspective stays the same. The next thing we want to do is we're going to apply this screen effect to our image. If you can see here, I just brought it in. It's basically just like these like lines. Let me go to the full resolution. It's like the lines you see on an old screen. This image right here came from a pack that I bought online. However, if you just Google, you know, TV fuzz, TV noise overlay, you'll be able to pull off the same effect. It might not be as high quality as an image, but that really doesn't matter when we're just blending this in and having it barely visible. So what we want to do with this is same thing. We want to, let's scale it down just a little bit, and we want to change its perspective to match with the TV. So let's again add the corner pin effect. I don't need to show that, we'll just do it. So that right there looks good. Next thing we want to do is we want to right mouse click on it, and we want to pre-compose, because we can't really mask around it while it has this corner pin effect on it. So we need to pre-compose. Let's make sure that we move all attributes to the new composition. Hit OK. Let's put it underneath our little text layer, and then let's change the blending mode to hard light. And now let us create a mask around it to match right with our TV screen. We can feather it out a little bit, something like 15, let's do 5 actually, just to soften it up a little bit. And then let's add a wiggle expression to our opacity of this little background effect we've done. So we type in wiggle, let's go 140. And then what we're going to do from there is we're going to just take the opacity itself and bring it pretty far down. Let's go to like 35. Actually, let's bring it down to, let's say 15, and then let's change the wiggle effect to 100,5, and that's gonna get the effect that you just want. Actually, maybe you don't want it. Play around with it, figure it out. But that leaves us with this right here, and it really gives the effect that we have this text illuminating off of this old TV screen that doesn't even work. But yeah, if you want to go check out the rest of my sister's wedding video, make sure you click the link in the description like I said before. Show the support. Tell me what you think. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you fall in love? Did you cry? Did you laugh? Who knows? Make sure that you like this video, subscribe, hit that bell notification so you can stay up to date with this channel. We'll be dropping more tutorials by the week. Yeah, as we're approaching the end of the year. Yeah. And I've said in previous videos, I just recently did a short film myself that I'm editing, and along with 3 other short films for other people, and doing effects and techniques that I've never tried before. So as I'm learning with that stuff, I just really hope to bring you along on that journey, and we'll learn together. So God bless, and I will see you in the next one.